Hey guys, and welcome to Gwent, the Witcher card game. My name is Jaggerous, and I have been getting some casting practice in during the Gwent Open. So today I have a solo cast of the first set of the event. That is Freddybabes versus Adzikov for you. And just bear in mind, because this was a stream, the audio quality is a little bit worse, and because it's a stream, I may occasionally address the stream, just to be clear with you guys. But let me know what you guys think in the comments below. Obviously, I do want to get more experience in as a caster in order to kind of showcase my abilities, so it'd be really nice to get any feedback that you do have. Other than that, enjoy. It's a great set. Kind of interesting. And here comes the mulligans. Okay, so Frost deck at the bottom will be, I would have thought, Adzikov, because it is an Eridan deck. And at the top we have, Northern Realm, so that's the Radovid deck of Freddy. So we can see Naneke, Sile, Dijkstra, Blue Stripe Commandos, Blue Stripe Scouts, Mahakam Ale, interestingly enough. So he's going to be mulliganing away those Blue Stripe Commandos. Those you're going to be pulling with your 3 strength units. He obviously doesn't want 2 Temerians. So there goes one. He's got 3 Scouts, which is quite nice. And he has a special pup to play with Shayla. Sile, I think is actually pronounced Shayla. And then, ooh, a Lambert. It's getting kind of spicy in here. Whereas at the bottom we can see Adzikov. He's got Igni, Caretaker, Frightener, 1 Crone, so he's got his Crone power play. He's got his Wild Hunt Riders to boost the power of his Frost, and he's got his Slizzards. Now, Slizzards are interesting. This is a new card, and the way it works is when you play it, you target a card in your graveyard, consume it, and pull another one. But you have to have cards in your graveyard. And the thing is, at the moment, Adzikov doesn't have ways to put cards in his graveyard. Like, often you see Slizzard in consume decks, for example, because you can consume cards, put them in your graveyard, and then play them. But as we can see here, Adzikov doesn't have ways of getting those cards in your graveyard, so he's kind of relying on Freddy to kill his stuff. Otherwise, he's not going to be able to play those cards round 1. But round 2, he's going to be able to use them to draw more Frost, to draw more Wild Hunt Hounds, for example, to draw more Wild Hunt Riders if he plays those, and that is going to be useful to him. The problem is he went first, and going first is awful because, he's got a reactive deck. He wants to Frost his opponent, he wants to deal damage to his opponent, and in playing first, he's had to basically guess where Freddy's going to play his units. And, Freddy can just play units around that, because in Gwent they've changed it such that units go to different roads. Like, most units are agile now, and because most units are agile, you can kind of just do what you want in that regard and play units, more or less wherever, and it's totally fine. So we saw there then the Drowner pulling the unit into the Frost and killing it. And the thing is with Freddy's deck is the more units that he has at 4 strength, basically the Blue Stripe Commando, I believe it is, Blue Stripe Scout, what that does is it buffs all units of the same value. So if he kills that unit, it's not just 4 damage, because if he plays those other 2 Scouts, it becomes a 5, it becomes a 6. So it's more damage than you would expect, basically. There you see he played the Commando. It pulled another unit, they all got buffed, they're all now 5s. If he plays another one, they're all now 6s, for example. So that's something to be aware of. But it's a bit risky because Adzikov has Igni. So if you have a row full of 5 strength units, for example, if you get 5 of them, he can burn all of them if there's nothing stronger on the row. So that's something worth being wary of. You can see here Adzikov's thinking about playing his Eridan, which I would expect then goes into a Navigator to pull a Frost and put more weather on the board. And Freddy doesn't have an answer for weather. He doesn't have any weather clear in his hand. So he just kind of has to deal with it, And dealing with weather can be frustrating, the kind of attrition damage at the moment, because it's only 1 row. It's only 2 damage per turn. But because he's playing Beer, Mahakam Ale, he wants to be putting units in every row. So he wants to be putting units on the back row, but if he puts units on the back row, then they get hit by Frost. And you'll see there it also hit that Commando, started to damage that a little bit. And in damaging that Commando, it then doesn't get the buff from the Commando. So it's not a Commando, sorry, from the Scouts. So this is a really interesting strategy. The card I'm most interested in, though, is Freddybabes Lambert. Lambert, when you play it, you damage a unit by, let me have a think here. You damage a unit by, I want to say like 5. I think you damage a unit by 4 or 5, and then all other copies of that unit get damaged. So this is really good in decks that play a lot of the same unit, basically, in that you can use Lambert and you damage a unit by 5 and up to 4 copies of it by 4. So it does less damage to the copies, but it's good against cards where you've got a lot of them on the board. You can get a lot of value out of it if you want to. We see Adzikov there playing the Wild Hunt Rider on the middle row. This is going to boost the strength of his Frost by 1. So now his Frost is ticking for 3 per turn rather than 2. So Freddy is taking, you know, 3 damage per turn. He's currently on 24 points, but actually because of that 3 frost damage, he's on 21 points. So if he wants to get ahead of his opponent, then he would need to play, I believe, 12 points. But because he's going second, he doesn't necessarily have to keep tempo with Adzikov. Going second, so long as you can catch up to your opponent in 2 cards, you know, you're more or less in a happy place. I'm not entirely sure why they're showing Iris on the screen. They probably know what's in their opponent's decks and are talking about those kind of cards, because the frost strategy that you see here with Adzikov actually goes really well with Iris, because the way the frost strategy works is because you're doing 3 damage per tick, you can then play Iris on any row, and if you play Iris on a row, she instantly dies and you get 25 points and your opponent has no chance to counter her. So that is a really strong strategy. In terms of the Ails, the reason you would maybe run Ails in a deck is because you want to use Sealay for deck thinning. And Ails on their own are just a straight 12-point, you know, play. Ails are a decent card. So if you have a spot left in your deck for a special card, some people do indeed like to run Ails. And because he's running Sealay or Sheila, whatever you want to call her, she plays a special card and then draws a card, so you can use that to get rid of the Ails. Ails are also, you know, an okay pull with Dijkstra. They're not going to kind of mess you up too much. But this is kind of, like I say, it's kind of an awkward spot now, because Adzikov doesn't really want to play much else from his hand. Nothing has died, so he can't play Slizzard, right? Oh no, that's a lie. That is a lie. Freddy killed a Frosthound. Freddy killed a Frosthound, so Adzikov can actually pull his last Frosthound with the Slizzard. He plays Slizzard, he gets a Frosthound, that's 7 points. Plus the Frost tick of 4 is, oh no, sorry, 5, because he does a 3 and then a 2. So he could play Slizzard here into a Frosthound, pull a Frosthound, and completely frost the whole row. But he's decided instead to opt for Crones. Crones is a big 20-point tempo play. You've got 8 plus the 2 6s that you pull there. And she thins your deck. So she's kind of risky, the Crones, in that you have Crones, you need to mulligan them. But you can't blacklist them because they're individual cards. And because he also has to mulligan Frost in this deck, it's a little bit risky running Frost and Crones, because if you draw 3 Frosts and 3 Crones, it kind of fucks up your mulligan. But that doesn't happen very often, fortunately. So Adzikov opting to play the Crones here and try and secure this first round. And, you know, Freddy's in kind of a tough spot because of all this Frost. He can't really do anything about it other than accept 3 points per turn. But 3 points per turn is quite a lot. If he wants to set up his Ails, which he might want to do so that he can play Sealay, then he's maybe going to have to choose to take damage. Alternatively, he has to just choose that, you know, he gets 4 less damage from the Ail, and I would say that is the better choice. I think you're better off not playing into the Frost and just losing 4 damage on 8 points on an Ail than you are playing into the Frost. But as you can see, Adzikov has just played his Frightener and forced Freddy into a situation where he's playing into the Ail, not into the Ail, into the Frost. So now that's actually kind of helped him, because now he can choose to play the Ail quite, you know, freely. He can play Sealay and find the cards that he wants, and get a lot of points. But more importantly, what's happened there is he's set up a Igni. There is a huge Igni going on in the middle row. And Freddy, I hope, has noticed this. I think he will, as a, you know, quality player. He will notice this, that there are the 4 6s there all set up for Adzikov to burn should he want to, especially as we just saw him move the Lambert there. Now, if Freddy plays the Beer, which he, I believe, is going to, having hovered Sheila, if he plays the Ale, then that will buff a unit on the middle row. And you'll notice there that he actually chose to play her on the middle row in order to protect those 6s. He didn't actually need to do that, though, because the Ale, you know, the Ale would have gone wherever and buffed her. Although she might be a row-locked unit. Sheila might be one of the few remaining row-locked units. I might be wrong. What that means now is he can't get his big Igni. He can get 2 7s, though. I mean, he can still get a 19-point Igni, which is decent, but it's maybe not exactly what you want. You know, you wanted those 4 6s. You wanted that 29-point Igni. 29-point Igni, much nicer than a 19-point Igni, but 19-point Igni still decent, you know? Still not a bad play. The thing is, Adzikov is 31 points down. I mean, if you include the Frost 5 points, he's not 31 points down. He's a few less. He's 5 points less. He'd be 26 points down. 19-point Igni. Now it's relatively close. You know, now he's on 49. Freddy's on 56. There's 7 points in it. If you include the Frost tick that will happen next time Adzikov plays, that's not a lot of points. That's not a lot of points. And Freddy drew a Dunbanner Heavy Cavalry, which is not a useful draw here. You know, you don't want card that targets armor when you haven't played any armor. He could play the Beer, he could get 12 more points, and, you know, that would be decent, but ultimately, you know, he has to decide whether he wants to keep playing on this round. He doesn't know that Adzikov has a handful of Slizzards. You know, he doesn't realize Adzikov has a handful of Slizzards. And And so that's kind of fortunate for him. Adzikov, I think we'll see here, play a Slizzard. I believe you have to target something. Yeah, so he's going to have to pull his Frost, and that's actually his last Frost pulled from the deck. So this is good for Adzikov in that it thins his deck, but it's bad for Adzikov. It means that he no longer has any more Frost to play. And if he no longer has any more Frost to play, his whole Frost strategy with the Wild Hunt Riders is kind of dead. So while that was a good round for Adzikov, I'm wondering what his plan is as a win condition for future rounds, considering, I was going to say he has no more Frost, and then he draws Corinthia. Corinthia, not a bad mulligan. Sorry, not a bad draw. I imagine... There. Oh, wow. I was going to say, I imagine he'll mulligan this Lizard, but he's opted to mulligan the Drowner and found the Iris. So that's kind of set him up for points in the final round, because he can play that Corinthia, and then once he plays that Corinthia, he can get that Frost set up, and then he can use the Slizzard to draw a Wild Hunt Rider, because he's got Wild Hunt Riders in his graveyard. So he can guarantee the Slizzard, Wild Hunt Rider set up with the Frost, and that will make the Frost tick for 3, which is going to guarantee his kill on Iris. So he's actually in a nice position here. You know, previously not in such a nice position, but he drew his Frost, he drew his Iris, and that's made his life a bit better. And Freddy's in a bit of an awkward spot because he has to decide what he wants to play to win this round. And ultimately, you know, you don't necessarily want to play the Dunbanner because you have the Stennis. You don't want to play Dijkstra because that's a final round win condition. Yeah, I mean, maybe you reinforcements and pull something out of the deck, or maybe you just play the Dunbanner because you can reinforcements another one later. I mean, I don't obviously know what Freddy has in his deck. 3 cards available for the reinforcements, so potentially more Dunbanner, and he's just opted to pull a Reaver Scout and win with 1 point, which is always, you know, it's a satisfying play. You play that 1 point, win the round 0-1, and now we're going into the final round. Freddy has to go first, which means Adzikov is quite safe in terms of his Iris, right? Like, he can last play her into the Frost if that works, and it should be great. Especially as we see at the moment, Freddy doesn't have any weather clear. Freddy can't do anything about the Frost. Like, he just kind of has to accept it. So it's a little bit awkward in that regard. Marching orders, I wonder what the marching orders is going to pull. He did just play a Reaver Scout, so we know he has at least 1 Reaver Scout, so maybe that's what it will pull. But, you know, it might not. Like, what is it going to pull? That is kind of the question we have here, because the Reaver Scout pulls a target, but you have to have a target to pull. So he doesn't at the moment have a target. If he plays Stennis might pull a Dunbanner, which then would give him a target for the Reaver Scout, but it might equally draw a Reaver Scout, which has no target, if that makes sense. Basically, depending on what is in Freddy's deck, he's in a little bit of an awkward spot here in terms of sequencing, because he wants to pull things in certain orders, like in terms of playing his Reaver Scouts, and so it's going to be a little bit awkward to make sure he gets the cards that he wants, because he's playing things like Stennis, which are RNG related, like Dijkstra, which are RNG related. Marching orders is a targeted draw, but if he has 1 more Reaver Scout, obviously he doesn't want to target draw that yet. We can see there that he's played the Trollolol. That is a sensible first play. That will rack up armor every turn. So he's racking up 2 armor per turn on the Trollolol, and by racking up that armor, it would then give him a good target for his Dunbanner Cavalry. However, as you may have seen there, Adzikov has just played Frost, and that completely negates the points that he's gaining with the Trollolol. So basically, Trollolol is gaining armor per turn, right? So Trollolol gains armor per turn, which is quite nice. But if he's in Frost, the Frost then removes the armor. However, it's Frost, so it hits the smallest unit in the row. So Freddy could potentially play a smaller unit in that row, and that would then protect the Trollolol. You know, that would allow the Trollolol to rack up armor, which means if he's going for Dunbanner, it's quite heavy. Quite useful. There's the Dunbanner there. He also has Naneki, and Naneki's going to allow him to put more cards into his deck. So you can see he's down to 4 cards in his deck at the moment. Dijkstra pulls 2, and I believe that Marching Orders will pull a 3rd. And if he's running, he might be running, I don't know. If he's running certain cards like Han Marvin's Blue Dream, then he's going to be able to pull more cards because he'd be able to replay Dijkstra. I don't think that he is, because he's not dealing damage, and typically you would run Han Marvin's Blue Dream in a deck where you can deal damage so that you can guarantee the kill on Dijkstra. Out comes the Wild Hunt Rider. I did tell you guys this was going to happen. So he plays the Wild Hunt Rider with the Slizzard, and then he can play Iris into that back row quite safely without really any concerns. The card I am most concerned about at the moment is Muzzle in Adzikov's hand, because Muzzle at the moment just does not do anything, right? He's got the Muzzle, but he needs a unit with 8 strength. At the moment, Freddy doesn't have any 8 strength unit, so he has no target, and a dead Muzzle could really cost him. He's also got his Caretaker, and Caretaker's kind of interesting because the way Caretaker works is you want to play that and take a card from your opponent's deck, but your opponent also has Neneki, and if he plays Neneki, he can basically put the good targets that Adzikov would want to Caretaker back into his deck. So Neneki kind of counters Caretaker here. So basically what he can do is put cards back into his deck like Stennis and like Sile that are useful. And if he puts those cards back in, then what that achieves is it stops Adzikov from being able to see value in his Caretaker. And at the moment, he really doesn't have good targets for Caretaker. Even taking Sile, which is 7, he doesn't have a special card to play to get the draw out of her. So, you know, it's not really a great play for Adzikov. And I mean, what does he target here with his Silzadai? He's got a Drowner. There you go. I was going to say, I was worried he didn't have a target, but he's got a Drowner, so it's all good. Gets that out. And so, yeah, Iris, Caretaker, and Muzzle. Muzzle now, you'll notice he can now target Neneki, so he's now got 14 points on his Muzzle. But, you know, if Freddy plays Beer, then he loses those points. He loses that Muzzle value. So that is something that I think maybe he should be aware of with the Muzzle. Like, you know, you can expect a Muzzle. At the moment, all of your units are above 8 except for Neneki. And I think Adzikov is probably going to go for the Muzzle here before he goes for the Caretaker and before he goes for the Iris to kind of guarantee it. I think that's a more sensible play. And Freddy's actually done really well with this armor strategy. He's had this commando strategy for the first round win, and then he's gone for this armor strategy for the subsequent win, and it played off really nicely for him. Like, it's played out really good. Adzikov, you saw, had great frost damage in the first round, but couldn't really keep up with the tempo. He's gone there. Oh, is he going for Dijkstra? Interesting. This is really interesting because oh, he got Natalis. So Natalis into nothing, and then Banard Tutor. This is really interesting because if he'd played the Beer, he would have gotten fewer points from the Beer, but he would have been able to stop the Muzzle. But as it is, he can't stop the Muzzle because there's a 5 and at the back row, so it doesn't actually matter. 9,000 power level. I try my best. Sorry if I'm talking too fast. I can talk a bit slower. There's so much I want to say. You know, there's so much to cover in this game, and because I'm solo casting here, it's a little bit tricky for me to keep up with everything. As it is, though, the Iris was too much. It was just too much, and Freddy gives up the round there. I think Freddy, his deck was really interesting. I like the ideas with the armor and stuff, but he had no weather counter, and the double Iris, by Adzikov is really nice, and that is definitely one of the plays you can make in that Frost deck, and that's what Caretaker allows. Caretaker does allow that double Iris, and oh, it just kind of hurts, you know. It just kind of hurts. I think if he'd been able to clear the weather, you know, if he could clear the weather, that would have gone the other way. That would have completely gone the other way for Freddy, but he just didn't have weather clear, and it didn't look like he was running weather clear. You know, we saw all of his cards there. We saw everything that he was playing more or less, and absolutely no weather clear. We saw Natalis, we saw Sile. You know, I don't actually think he had any. So that matchup really not great for Freddy. Admittedly, at the moment, you know, people aren't playing huge amounts of weather, but there was definitely weather being played. You know, Eridan is still a threat, and I feel like going into a tournament with a deck with no weather clear is incredibly risky, especially after the previous Gwent Open. In the previous Gwent Open, or was it Gwent Slam, sorry, Metronos came in with these decks with gold weather, and he just destroyed people because people didn't expect decks with 2 gold weather. But I feel like Eridan Frost is a fairly standard deck, and so it's a little bit risky in that regard. And bear in mind, Adzikov went first in that round. People talk about the coin flip, but Adzikov went first. He was just fortunate enough that he had the Frost, and he had the Rider, and basically Freddy couldn't do anything about it. You know, he couldn't do anything about the Frost, and it allowed Adzikov to play the Iris. It allowed Adzikov to play the Iris, kill the Iris, Caretaker the Iris, and replay the Iris. And what are you gonna do? What are you gonna do when they come for you? You know. Okay, so Freddy's sticking with the deck. Freddy is sticking with this deck. Adzikov, there it is. It's movement. I did say it was potentially movement, and there's double gold weather. And this is exactly what I'm saying right now. It's such a shame. He doesn't have weather clear. How do you play into Ragnarok and Drought without weather clear? And this, to me, it looks like it's going to have to be a reverse sweep for Freddy if he wants to stay in the game. Because he really doesn't have a lot to deal with this weather. Like, he can lock the marksmen there. The marksmen, they deal damage when you play them, and then they deal damage whenever a unit is moved. They shoot that unit. They combo really nicely with Zoltan, and they combo really nicely with Ard. But Freddy doesn't have weather clear, so he's really kind of messed up here. And Adzikov knows he's running Mahakam Ale. Mahakam Ale requires you to play units on every single row. If you play units on every single row, your opponent is just going to benefit from the weather. So Freddy here he's kind of damned if he does, and he's damned if he doesn't. And that makes life really, really difficult for him. You know, what do you do in this situation? Like, you've seen, as soon as you see that marksman, you know it's movement. As soon as you know it's movement, you know it's weather. There's got to be weather. You know, it's kind of just a given. It's one of these situations which is 100% going to happen. Interestingly, we've got a Barclay and we've got an operator. I wonder what Adzikov is planning to operator. The marksmen are really, really good in the deck. Because you have a lot of movement effects, they typically work quite nicely. And then you'll see there he has the dwarf, the 2-strength dwarf, and the way that works is it pulls, or it actually doesn't pull, it spawns a copy of another dwarf in your deck. I would imagine that they are the dwarven mercenaries, the ones that move units to different rows. That would kind of make sense to me. And he's kind of hovering Zoltan. If he plays Zoltan now, he'll move all of those units, and all of those units will get shot. And they'll take 2 damage from Zoltan. So the 2/4s will get killed, and the Trollolol would lose its armor. And a little bit, I would say maybe that's potentially a little bit of a preemptive play, because he clearly wants to take out the 4s and stop them from being buffed by their teammates. And also if he kills them, it means that Freddy can't play a Reaver Scout, which we've seen him play, and pull another one. So it's kind of a tactical play there. But actually Freddy didn't have any of the cards that he needed in that regard. So it was maybe a little bit early, and potentially I think Adzikov would be safer having played a second marksman. I mean, the thing is, he doesn't know, right? He doesn't know that, and he wants to stop the commando chain from happening. So ultimately, Adzikov, I think, is making the safer play. I still think, though, that this match is totally in favor of Adzikov. You know, he's got everything. He's got kind of everything, and Freddy kind of has nothing. Like, his hand has both of his weathers in it, which is really nice. We saw Roach come out there. Roach is a really nice card to include if you're playing Gold Weather, because what Roach does is she is a silver card that comes out when you play a gold card. And so Gold Weather is typically seen as low tempo plays. You're not often going to get a lot of points out of it turn that you play it. The point is that it ticks for multiple turns, and then that's how you get lots of value. But if you attach a Roach to it, when you play Gold Weather, if that's the first gold card that you play, you pull an extra 4 points out, and it gives you a little bit more value. And it also means that you can choose to open with just Gold Weather, and you'll still see value in that. So thinking about that last marksman, I'm assuming that Adzikov is running Ard. Ard is very common in movement decks, so he has to kind of decide whether he'd rather really all in this round with the marksman, or whether he would rather wait. And I think he's probably better off waiting with the marksman and maybe playing some weather, because he can't play weather now because it's low tempo. Well, he can because he's going second. But if he plays weather now, he then has to move units into the weather. So that's kind of something that he has to be aware of. But in doing that, he does negate Freddy's value in his beers. His beers then become, they become, I believe, 4-point plays. And he's opted to go with Drought. Drought hits the smallest unit, so that will hit the 4s rather than the Trollolol. So he'll keep stacking armor, which is very good for Freddy. But the smaller units will then get killed, which is not good if he's playing commandos, because then he has fewer units to buff. He's not playing commandos, so he doesn't have any in his hand, but still, that is something that is worth being aware of. He has Sheila, so he can play Sheila into the beer, but if he does that, he's playing into weather, and that's worth being aware of. He is currently on 29 points, and Adzikov is on 18. If he passes, Adzikov will have to make up, I believe, 11 points with one play, which is kind of, it's kind of tough for him. I think he can do it with his Dwarven Agitator, the one in the middle. He can probably Dwarven Agitator into another Dwarf into movement, and that would be pretty good. Safe pass? I don't know. I don't think you want to pass there. I think against movement, you need to bleed them, because they don't have big tempo plays with movement. Movement doesn't have tempo plays. The way movement wins is they basically wear you down with weather, you pass, and then they pass into another long round. Like, movement really likes 2 long rounds, so I personally don't feel like Freddy can pass here if he wants to win. Especially as he's played Champion of Champions, so he has options with the Dumbana, for example, to get a lot of points. You saw there the movement effect come out. He moved the unit onto another row with his dwarves, and he's actually played a second Agitator with Barclay. So Agitator is probably his target, I would have thought, for Operator. If the Operator is an Agitator, he gives Freddybabes a 2-strength unit. He gives himself a unit that pulls a Dwarven Merc, which is a lot more points. So it's the better play for him. But he probably doesn't really want to do that till turn 3, because at the moment, what Freddy can do is Freddy can just mulligan the Agitator if Adzikov were to play Operator. So that's a little bit awkward. And this is actually kind of awkward for Adzikov. Like, he has his Scorch, so he can always kill the Trollolol. But I kind of think they're playing a game of chicken there, right? If he plays the Scorch and he kills the Trollolol, then he gets the 11, but he also kills the armor. Now, Freddy wants the Trollolol to stack up a bunch of armor so that he can remove it and play a strong unit. But then if he removes it and plays it as a strong unit, then Adzikov can also play... if he removes it and plays a strong unit, then Adzikov can also play Scorch. So Adzikov can kind of sit on his laurels and wait here with the Trollolol. He doesn't necessarily need to take that Scorch, but he does need to make sure that he's, making enough points. And he's had to commit that third Marksman, which he probably didn't want to do, because Marksman, like I say, they do a lot of damage. They do a lot of damage when your opponent plays movement effects, if your opponent plays Ard. So it's a little bit risky here. There's a Merc. I'd imagine he'll mulligan one of the Mercs, because he can obviously pull them with Agitators anyway. There it goes. And then we have 2 Ales, Stennis. I feel like you mulligan an Ale, right? Because you know that your opponent's playing Weather, so you're going to want to be row stacking. So holding on to Ale is not that useful. Marching Order's nice. He's got a lot of silvers in his hand. So, what do we do here? This is the question. He's looking at his Shani. He can Shani Trollolol back, but he doesn't really want to do that this round, right? This round is likely to be a short round. That's how Gwent typically works. Adzikov likes long rounds. He knows more or less that Freddy doesn't have Weather Clear, unless Freddy was incredibly unlucky with his draws. So he's kind of thinking, maybe I should just pass and we'll go into the final round on even cards, right? That is what he's thinking here. Do I pass, or do I try and, beat him this round? And I think the safe thing to do is to pass, right? You want to pass because you want to put that Agitator into Freddy's hand in a situation where he can't mulligan it. I guess unless he had a Banard Adept, I believe they let you mulligan a card, do they not? Let me have a look. Banard Adept. So let's do some quick research while we're at it. Gwent Wiki. Wait, no, that's not Banard Adept. Maybe it's Banard Tutor. Helps if you actually know the names of the cards. Casual research here, casual research. Yeah, you may mulligan a card, but choose a Bronze Spell or Alchemy card from your deck to replace it. So, he would be able to mulligan with the Banard and choose a card. You're guessing Adzikov will have Hattori. I don't know, why would you? I guess, actually, no, you would run Hattori so that you could replay Barclay. I think Hattori is a good card in this deck, actually, because it gives you that extra Barclay, which gives you an extra Dwarf, which gives you an extra movement. Especially if it's an Agitator, it gives you, like, a metric ton of Dwarfs. Stennis into deck thinning. That's actually not too shabby. It's not too shabby because he has Naneki, so he can put Stennis back. So he has the option of replaying Stennis. I think this round what he's going to want to do, Freddy, is he's going to want to res that... He's going to want to res the Trollolol as soon as he can, but... he's in a bit of an awkward spot because of that Scorch. That Scorch makes his life kind of miserable because he's kind of sacrificing one of his units. Like, he's going to sacrifice one of his cavalry. So he has to kind of figure out how he wants to play that, because I think you would expect a Scorch in a movement deck. Movement doesn't have a lot of big units, and if you don't have a lot of big units, you can kind of quite safely play Scorch, and, everything is okay. This is the thing, you can safely play Scorch in a movement deck because you're playing small units. The decks that you don't play Scorch in are decks like Spies, for example, because Spies, you have lots of very big units, and often you'll end up in a situation where you Scorch yourself, which you don't want to be in. So those are the kind of situations where I think you would play Scorch. So I would imagine that Freddy expects the Scorch here, but I still think he needs to go down the line of resurrecting the... Oh, interesting. He's gone for the Adept. And bear in mind, Operator hasn't been played here yet. Operator hasn't been played, so the Adept isn't even getting rid of a 2-point pull for him there. Adzikov is just like, here is the weather, enjoy. Here is the weather, enjoy. And interesting, Adzikov, he's only just found the Blue Mountain Commando there. You see the 3 strength unit. He plays that, he pulls 2 more units, and that is pretty good. But the thing is, like I said, so he's pulled the Banard, but he hasn't been given the 2 strength units. So that is still kind of to come. The Operator play is still kind of to come. And Adzikov can play that more or less whenever. He can use that, whenever he wants. In terms of sequencing, that's just kind of something that he'll do. He could do it now, he could do it later. It doesn't it doesn't really matter when he plays that. So it's kind of nice because he might want to wait and see what his opponent is up to. And that's a good option for that. We've got Natalis. So I would assume... Oh, actually, we haven't seen Commander's Horn in this deck, have we? He played Natalis and it pulled nothing. So I guess Natalis is there to draw reinforcements. So he can Natalis into reinforcements into something from his deck, right? He has that option. But it's just this weather and these ales is kind of what's ailing me, shall we say. Like, I still see this as Adzikov's game because his weather basically directly counters these ales, and Freddy doesn't have weather clear. So what do you do? You know, what do you do here? If you play units across rows, you're basically giving your opponent 6 value per turn, which you don't want to do. And even then, you know, you're only gaining 12 points from the ale. You're probably better to just take a 4-point ale. But it's not a fun situation to be in. You know, Adzikov is fairly, you can see the way he's playing. He's very confident with his plays. And Freddy's kind of sitting there trying to think his way out of this situation and think his way to victory. And as I said right at the start of the game, this is Adzikov's game to lose. Like, Freddy's in such a tricky spot with this in terms of what he plays. And I guess you put Stennis and Trollolol back in, right? Like, those are the sensible cards to put back in, because then you can try and find them with Dijkstra, or try and draw one with Sile, and that gives you kind of options. Because he's got Stennis, not Stennis, he's got Natalis, and Natalis he can play into marching orders, which means he can basically target draw any of them. You know, he can target draw any of them, and that's fine. And this might be the situation. I think this has to be the situation where you play those ales, because you're not going to find more situations where you're going to see value in ale, where the units are across rows. I mean, sure, he's getting attrition points, but this kind of negates those attrition points a little, and he might see value in it in the long term. So I think, like, while your units are spread out like that, you kind of have to play it, because he doesn't have anything that's going to move the units back, right? These units are going to be on those rows. You know, Adzikov is going to be getting that value, and there is nothing that you can do about it. So at this stage, what you might be better off doing is just accepting that, playing your ale, and getting those 12 points. As it is, he's gone for Natalis, because the other thing he has to be aware of, I was going to say, is in terms of his draws. Actually, I think he's played reinforcements, so we got marching orders there. Into another empty Dun Banner. Oh, you hate to see it, you guys. This is, you know, the thing is, like, Freddy, like, he does have 14 odd points on Adzikov, but Adzikov is getting 6 points per round. Adzikov has 9 points with his commandos, and he has, what, 9 points per piece plus the movement effect with his agitators. And if he moves his blue mountain commandos, they get bonus points when they move. So let's work this out. So he's got 9 points from his blue mountain commando, then 2 plus 7 from his dwarves is 9, plus the movement effect of the dwarf is another 3, 10, 11, 12, plus the fact that they get buffed by 2 when they move, 14. So he's got 2 14s and a 9, 28 plus 9. Jesus Christ, he has a lot of points, you guys. Like, a lot of points. Whereas Freddy has 2 12s, but he's also losing 6 points per turn. So you just minus 6 points off of every card that he plays, basically, is kind of what you have to do there. And that makes life kind of awkward. Stennis is a good draw. He can basically thin his deck to nothing, so he can get every single card out of his deck. Cards that he's got left in his deck, he's put, I believe, Trollolol back in there, so he can pull a Trollolol. Beyond that, you know, I'm not entirely sure what else is left in there. He can play all of his cards for sure, but it's not great. Plus, he's got Broover. I just realized Adzikov still has Broover as well. I think he has to wonder about when to Scorch. You know, he's seen 2 Dun Banner, so he knows that Freddy doesn't have armor on those. So he's wondering, you know, how much more armor value is he going to get? Do I Scorch now and get 10, or do I wait? And I think at the moment you wait. Like, you can afford to wait because you're not too worried about your own units getting stronger. But after this, when he starts to play those agitators, he is going to be, you know, buffing those commandos, those blue mountain commandos. So they're going to be going up in points quite rapidly. They're going to be coming, the first time he moves it, I believe it becomes an 8. The second time he moves it, it would become more. But, you know, the smart play would be to not move the same one twice. But he still has to be just, like, a little bit wary because he's got Ragnarok. And the thing with Ragnarok is Ragnarok hits the strongest unit, right? So this is kind of directly countering his Scorch. So there, Adzikov had to think, do I want to take a 10-point Scorch, which is nice and safe, or do I wait until Freddy's played something bigger, knowing that he's likely to play the Dun Banner Cavalry and this armor strategy? That's kind of where he is and what he's thinking. And honestly, that the Agitator in his hand is horrible, because Agitator, what it's doing is it's increasing the number of turns that the weather is going to be ticking, right? So if he plays an Agitator, Agitator is 2 points. He has no dwarfs. It draws nothing, right? And then the weather triggers and Freddy takes 6 damage. So that Agitator basically is a net -4 in his hand. You know, it's not what you want to see. It's not what you want to see. But on the flip side, maybe Freddy can draw this out long enough that Adzikov doesn't see a good Scorch target, because Adzikov, although actually no, because Adzikov is going last, so Adzikov can just wait till the very end to Scorch. But at the moment, you know, there's not a lot of good options with Scorch for Adzikov, because the highest units are 8 and they're on his side. However, Freddy has Dijkstra and Freddy has beer. Freddy has Mahakam Ale. But if Freddy plays Mahakam Ale late, then potentially what could happen is it might not buff anything enough, right? It's going to make a 7 on the back row. It could make an 11 on the middle row. So, you know, it's one of those kind of weird cards in that you don't really know what's going to happen. Lambert is a really nice pull here because of the 3 scouts. He's actually going to kill one of the scouts here. So if he hits the 8, I would expect for the 5 damage, kills the other 2, and then pulls Trollolol, which is an 11, but that then enables Adzikov's Scorch. But Freddy does have 64 points, you know? Freddy has a lot of points there. Like, it's a big ask for Adzikov to make back, because he's currently now hitting armor. He's currently hitting armor with his weather. So there's the Scorch to stop it from hitting the armor. And at this point, you know, 38 to 53, then he gets 4 damage, I believe, because the 3rd hit of Ragnarok actually hits an armor target. So he's on 49, but what's he got in hand? You know, this is the thing. This is basically no points. I think Adzikov still has this. He still has Bruver, and he has his Agitator. And Bruver can pull, you know, another Agitator. So there's the Dwarven Merc, then he moves the Commando, then again the weather hits, and now 52 to 51, yeah. And Freddy, he's going to be playing 12 points with the Ale, but then, you know, he's going to lose 5 from the Ragnarok, plus the Bruver, and that's GG. And Freddy knows it's GG. And, you know, this would have been a really tough one for Freddy. For him to win this would be impressive because of his deck. Because his deck going into double weather like that, you know, it's just not fun. It's a deck that completely thins out and plays all of his cards, but he doesn't have weather clear. And that puts Adzikov quite comfortably in a 2-0. And what this means is Freddy knows that Adzikov is playing Bran next. So Freddy is then thinking, what do I want to play to counter Bran? And potentially, you know, he might have teched all of his decks into Bran counters. That might be his win condition. His win condition might be, I will beat Bran 3 times. Maybe. Who knows? Who knows? This is the thing with tournament play, is that players, they have to kind of think about how they want to go into this, whether their plan is to go into this to target one deck that you expect your opponent to bring and have all your decks set up to counter that deck, and then you just have to beat that deck 3 times and you're through. You know, that might be what Freddy's plan has been. He might have planned to counter Bran. You can see he's actually switched things up and he's gone for his Consume deck here rather than his Radovid. I think this is a good plan. You know, he has to win with Radovid for sure, but he needs to get a break from Radovid and maybe play something that Adzikov doesn't know. Because Adzikov knows his Radovid. Adzikov has seen him play his Radovid. Adzikov knows every single card in his Radovid. So for him, you know, that's an easier opponent. He doesn't really have to, you know, maybe think as much. So this is maybe good to try and throw Adzikov off his stride a little bit, especially as Adzikov will be starting this round. So we can see in Echoes, Harpies, Ekamara. I believe we saw Woodland Spirit. We see Great Giant Toad. Giant Toad, you typically see Giant Toad or Prince Toad or whatever it's called with Manticore and Katakan. Well, the Katakan got a name. It's called like Nekarat now. There you go. And this is a very standard discard list. So he's going to discard Ceres. He's going to discard Morkvarg, and he's going to discard. Ooh, this is where it gets interesting. Something else. Some people like Wolfsbane. Some people like Olgierd. I think he discarded a Warmonger there, but then he can resurrect a Warmonger because he has 3 Warmongers, and thus he can res the Warmonger and thin his deck some more, which is pretty nice. So you know, it's a pretty kind of standard deck for Adzikov. It thins itself quite safely. I'm much more interested in Freddy's deck here, and I'm also more interested in Freddy's state of mind. And so Freddy hasn't gone for the kind of standard NECA Swarm, I don't think. I think if you go NECA Swarm, you would see NECA Warriors and you would see Slizzard. But he's gone for Harpies and Ekamara, which is a much more standard kind of format for the strategy that you're seeing here. It's a much more kind of old school style of consume. This is the kind of style of consume we used to see, because you can have the Ekamaras and they can eat the eggs. You have lots of eats and then you buff up your neckers and then you play your neckers and you can chain them out. And that's pretty nice. So that is kind of what Freddy's strategy is. Freddy's strategy is to, I guess, play out these neckers. Play out his consumes, buff up his neckers, play a necker, eat a necker, and then win with carryover, I would assume is what he's kind of going for here. Adzikov's strategy is to discard cards and thin his deck, get lots of points, guarantee his draws, and then play, restore and play Gremist. And the thing is, Consume actually is a very interesting one. Monsters in general is an interesting one for Skellige to play up against, because you need to be a little bit wary of... Oh, look at them come out. The Harpies are on the march, you guys. Freddy's got all of the Harpies. You need to be a little bit wary of Caretaker, because Caretaker will just take your Gremist and then you don't longer have your, restore target, really. So that's the one thing that Adzikov's going to be wary of in this deck. Freddybabes pulling 3 Harpies. The Harpies, the way they work now, is as you consume things, they will pull if you consume a beast. And I believe Freddybabes, he played Woodland Spirit, then he played Consume with his Unseen Elder. He ate the 3 wolves, and that pulled all 3 of the Harpies. And that's thinned his deck really nicely. And this is the thing that is really important at the moment, is consistency. You want consistent decks. That's what's best on the ladder. And Freddy's gone... if you looked at his previous deck, it was very consistent as well. He managed to thin his entire deck with his Northern Realms deck. And now he's thinning his deck again with his Monsters deck. So it seems to be that's his strategy. Weather, very nicely countered by the Armor Smith there. You saw basically what that does is it heals a unit and then puts armor on it. So now, those are sitting in weather with armor. But on the flip side, Freddy is 2 points ahead. So Freddy can choose to pass here. And if he does choose to pass here, then he will be 2 cards up. So he will have card advantage. But Adzikov will then get the round. So he has to decide, would I rather win this round, or would I rather lose with 2 card advantage? Because this is the point where he has that decision safely. He can't guarantee that he'll be able to pass for 2 card advantage again later in this round. It could be that Adzikov manages to maintain tempo, and if he does that, then he might not have this opportunity again. And this is something you see a lot in regular ladder. Is you'll see situations where a player could pass for 2 cards and doesn't, and it comes back to bite them in the butt. But you can see, he's chosen to go for Kieran instead and force that Ceres out, which he's still ahead, obviously, but he's also triggered the Ceres. So Adzikov no longer has that option for the next round. Because the thing is, if he did pass, what would happen is Morkvarg would have died, Morkvarg would have rezzed, Ceres would have rezzed, and then he'd have gone into the next round, and Adzikov would have had loads of carryover. So the 2-0 pass there maybe wasn't the right decision because of the carryover, so Freddy then choosing instead to negate that. But he, like I say, he may not be in a situation where he's able to do that again. You can see he's not worried about his opponent locking his necker because he's opted to play the cleaver and lock Ceres. So now, you're really negating the carryover, that potential that Adzikov has. Adzikov choosing to play Gremist. Gremist, you want to play him nice and early if you have Sig and if you have Restore, because you want him in your graveyard. But if you make this decision and Freddy has Caretaker and Freddy wins the round, then Freddy can just instantly play Caretaker and take care of your Gremist. So it's a kind of risky one. In terms of when you play it. So that's something that Adzikov has to be aware of. I don't know if these players, some tournaments they have lists, they can see their opponent's lists. I don't think that they do this tournament, but it is something to be aware of. That 1 point advantage with the Harpy play. Nice and comfortably, just uneven. He's checking his graveyard. What have I got to res? I can res a Harpooner. His Harpooner would do 5 damage to whatever he chooses to target. He's also got an 18-point Scorch though. And you can see he's tempted to do it. And you have to think, when are you going to get a better Scorch? And the answer here is probably not. The other question is, does my opponent have cards that will be able to catch me up? And again, with Consume has a lot of low tempo plays. Things like the Harpy, for example, is just a 7-point play. He can play the Ekamara and eat an egg, and that'll give him 11 points, I believe. I believe it turns into a... Well, it gives him 10 points, actually, because the egg then also... Actually, no, it's 11 because the egg turns into a harpy. I was right the first time. So he can get 11 points here, which puts him pretty close to Adzikov. He has that option. And it gives him 6 points of carryover. So that will kind of narrow the gap a little bit. The other thing that he could do is he could play the harpy because he can then play the 11 points of carryover later. And that would be pretty good. But if he chooses to do that, then it means that he can't play double Ekamara. Whereas here, he could choose to play an Akamara, and then if the pass happens, he can choose to play another Ekamara, and then life is pretty good, right? So we're gonna want to wait and see what Freddy chooses to do in terms of his plays. He played the Ekamara, so I'm guessing he might go for, you know, a second Ekamara if the pass comes through here. He's currently 6 points down. Alternatively, he could go for the Harpy. That gives him 2 more eggs for carryover and puts him ahead. But it means that he won't have an egg to eat with his Ekamara, which isn't necessarily terrible. You know, you don't get the bonus points of the egg, but what you do get is you still get the 6 points of carryover. So that's something that's quite nice. And Freddy is going to want to, I would have thought, want to play into the final round because he has his Neckers and he has his Ekamaras. Sorry, into the second round because he has his Neckers and he has his Ekamaras. So he wants to play that carryover, right? This is kind of where it becomes interesting, is what does Freddy decide to play here. The other thing he could do is he could play a Necker. If he plays a Necker, it gives him 8 more points of carryover for the next round because the Necker dies and then pulls another Necker. So he could do that. It also thins his deck of a Necker, which means he's less likely to draw Neckers, which he doesn't want to do. So there's the Necker play. And that gives him the win. And it means that his carryover is 14 points. No, 15, I believe, with the egg. So he should have 15 points of carryover, which is pretty nice. You know, it's going to be quite tricky for Adzikov to catch that up in one play. He can with Muzzle. And actually, this is the risky thing because that Necker only is 8 points. That is an 8-point Necker. And what that means is that Freddy needs to play a Consume, because if he doesn't play a Consume, 100%, if I'm Adzikov, I am eating that Necker. And Freddy's like, sorry, muzzling that Necker. And Freddy's like, you can't muzzle the Necker because I'm going to eat it. And that's basically pulled his last Necker, which means I would have thought he's going for a 2-0 here. Like, I think the plan for Freddy is to go 2-0 because he's chosen, like I said, to eat that Necker. And that's the third Necker, which means Coral is no longer as good as it would have been in terms of stopping the Neckers. Like, Adzikov has all of the answers to the Neckers, but Freddy's managed to basically play his Neckers before Adzikov could do that. He's still going to be able to Coral for, what, 12 points plus 5? 17-point Coral, which is pretty big. But it's not, you know, it's not stopped the Necker Consume points. And Necker Consume points are kind of a big deal in this situation. The thing is, he doesn't need to Coral now. He can kind of Coral whenever. It gives him a lot of points. He's choosing instead to thin his deck, because he's not going to be able to catch Freddy in one card anyway. So if you can't catch your opponent in one card, what you may as well do is you may as well thin. So that then when you do catch your opponent, you can then thin, and you've then thinned your deck, so then you then draw better going into the next round. And I think Freddy's in a tough spot. He can renew Woodland Spirit, which will get him Weather on the go. But he knows that Adzikov will have Gremist, right? Adzikov is going to be playing Resurrect and... Sorry, Restore and Sigdriffer. So he knows that if he does play the Fog, it's just going to get cleared. So he has to kind of decide, you know, whether he wants to do that or not. And potentially it's probably... I think it's still smart because it means that he can't use the... It means that he can't use the... Oh, he's opted to pass. I was going to say it means that he can't use the... Gremist for a bear, and that is something that, you know, he wants to do, and he's opted to pass here. So what have we drawn into? Udalric. Ooh, see, this is an interesting position because you've got the same number of cards. I was gonna say whether you mulligan the Udalric or not. I would say you do mulligan the Udalric because in the last turn you can't afford to give your opponent 12 points. You just can't, especially with a locked Ceres. But I was going to say that is something that I think Freddy needs to think about. Did he mulligan Renew? He mulliganed the Renew. Okay. So he doesn't want to replay... He doesn't want to replay... Unseen Elder. Not Unseen Elder. The Fog Dude. Woodland Spirit. There you go. Sometimes it's difficult, you guys. Sometimes it's difficult. Especially when it's just me. I'm just here, like, talking to you guys more or less constantly. It's a bit tricky. But anyway. So he's gone for the mulligan, but he's got 2... Harpies. He's got the Giant Toad into Manticore. That's a really nice play. Basically, you play the Giant Toad, you draw a card, you eat the Manticore, and you get 18 points. And you draw a card. So it's like an 18-point play, and you trade out one of your cards. And then if you draw Nekarat, you know, that's pretty nice. And Freddybabes, if he plays Gales first, he can basically guarantee what he draws with Giant Toad. Because I'm assuming he wants to draw Nekarat, right? And he can target draw the Renew, I would have thought, with the Toad Prince, unless he also has Caretaker. Oh no, he's already played Kayran, so we know he doesn't have Caretaker. Yeah, so he's mulligan the Renew so that he can Gales the Woodland Spirit, pull the Foglet, and then now he guarantees whatever he's going to draw with Toad Prince. Like, he knows what he's going to draw there. And I would imagine that it's Nekarat. And then you've seen the res into the Clear Skies, which we kind of expected, right? You know, he didn't really have a lot of other choices. He's got Doragare, so he can eat an egg. So he's got the option to eat eggs. He's got a couple Harpies. So he's actually in a pretty nice spot here. The thing is, he knows that Harpooners are a thing, and Harpies kind of help out your Harpooners, because if you play a Harpy, you're added 3 units to a row. If you add 3 units to a row, you add 3 damage to a Harpooner, right? So this is something that Freddy has to be aware of, and he has to be thinking, how do I want to play my cards? Do I want to row stack? Because if he row stacks, he's going to make a very, very fat row for Harpooners. But if he doesn't row stack, then, you know, he spread his units out, and the Harpooners will do less damage. That's kind of what he has to kind of think. If Adzikov has 2 Harpooners, it doesn't matter, because he'll just move 1 unit out, then move it back in. If Adzikov has only 1 Harpooner, though, you're better to row stack, because he's not obligated to put anything on 1 row. And he's opted for, like I say, that row stacking strategy. That is what he's going for. He does have a res, though, on a Harpooner, so actually he did have 2 Harpooners. I stand corrected. Although he's chosen to just play 1 and kill the Woodland Spirit, which gives him a happy 13 points. It's not bad. Not bad at all, as Geralt would say. I still think that Freddy has this, to be honest. He's got 18 points with his Consume. If his silver card is Nekarat, then he's got another 18 points with Nekarat. He's got 13 points with Doragare, and he's got 7 with Ekamar, with 7 with Harpy. So he's in a pretty nice spot. Adzikov can play the, I can't even think what they're called, new card, 2 strength. He can play that, the 2 strength card. That will hit a Warmonger, and you can pull another Warmonger. That's one of the ways that you can play it. I believe it's against machines and soldiers or what have you. Not really great targets for his muzzle, opting to just pull a 5 and take the points and kind of wait and see what Freddy opts to do. And I'd imagine that Freddy's gonna play his, I think he'll play his Doragare here. I think he's gonna keep his big point plays till later, right? You want to keep your big point plays until you've seen your opponent play as much of their counters as they can. And that's what's happening here. So down goes the Ekamara. He'll put that in the front row. Eat an egg, because you want to get the points. And now it's 26 to 32. But Freddy has some big boy plays in his pocket. Priestess of Freya, there he shot the machine, so he's got a Harpooner. And he can pull another Harpooner, so he's going to move that one out, and then he can move it in. That's his play with the Priestess, so he'll kill that. So, ooh, why did he play? He played that on the middle row. Is that row locked? I don't think it's row locked. And then Monster's Nest. So he's going to get res into 8 into 8, 16, 17, 18. That's another 18-point play. So Freddy has to make up 18 points with a Monster's Nest. Ghoul? What do you eat? 13. You eat the 13, right? Oh, it's a 17-point play, isn't it? He's off by 1. Wait. Oh, no, because Monster's Nest buffs it by 2. That's so hype. Oh, good for you, Freddy. That was such a close game. I forgot the Monster's Nest buffed by 2, so I thought he was going to lose it, but he had it right at the end there. I don't know why he's playing Giant Toad like that, though. He shouldn't be playing Giant Toad on a different row. I guess he was worried about a Lacerate, but that was risky. That was risky. Freddy's got to be feeling pretty good about that. He's got to be feeling pretty good. Like, he needed a win. I think people underestimate the kind of mental side of games, right? I think people underestimate the mental side of tournaments. Tournaments are very, very stressful. And especially if you're down 2 games and you're like, if I don't win this, I'm out. I think that can play on your mind a lot. And so you know, it's quite tough, I think, as a player to be in that situation. And I think Freddy, you know, he needed a win here. And, you know, maybe we'll see a 3-0 reverse sweep. We won't be a 3-0. We'll see a reverse sweep. The other thing to be aware of is in Gwent, your prizing is based on your score. So each match has a £1,000 prize. If Adzikov wins 3-0, he gets the full prize. But if Freddy wins some games, then it's split. So that is something that's worth being aware of. I really kind of want to know what they're saying, if only because I can see Dandelion spinning a leak, and I have no sound, so I have no idea what they're talking about. Right, he's back on Radovid. Back on Radovid. We saw Restore this time. We didn't see Restore last game. We have Restore this time. Ah, dearie me. The double lock, the Radovid is really nice against this deck because he can lock Morkvarg and he can lock Ceres. And I think locking Ceres was a big part of why Freddy won that. I think having that lock on Ceres is one of the kind of prime ways that you counter this deck. And it's something that Freddy did, and it allowed him to, I would say it allowed him to take that game, to be honest. Like, a large part of that was his counter strategy. So maybe he's set up to counter this. Yeah, 3 Raiders, Morkvarg, and Ceres in hand for Adzikov. So not the best starting hand. Freddy's just throwing out the Trollolol, and you can see Adzikov straight away is like, now it is a statue. He doesn't want to see that armor rack up. He doesn't want to see that strategy. He doesn't want that character to get rezzed. You know, none of that. No, not today. It's a good play. It's a good play because that's also his Shani target. But he can always, you know, Shani Sheila. He can always Shani Stennis. There's still other targets. He's got other options. It just means that his armor strategy is maybe not as powerful as you would like it to be. And Freddy's going to kind of think, what do I want to play into this round, you know? He hasn't played Bran yet. If he plays Bran, he'll discard Morkvarg, so that will put him ahead. So that would be 1 card advantage. I don't think you pass here. I think you need to thin your deck as Freddy. You've got so many Commandos and so many Temerians that this is not the place that you pass. This is not where you want to be. And there's Lugos, and then he's going to kill a 4. I would have thought he'll discard a Raider. So that reses the Raider, kills the 4, and then the 4, again, stops him from getting points. We did get a new subscriber. Shoutouts to the Ardu, who just subbed with Twitch Prime. Thank you so much for the sub, dude. I really appreciate it. We don't have alerts on at the moment just because I have the most janky setup to be able to actually do this for you guys. But I super appreciate the sub. And welcome, human friend, to the Jaguars. I don't know how you can be a Jaguar and a human friend at the same time, but never mind. So yeah, you can see Adzikov, the way he counters the strategy, we saw this in the previous game as well, is that he just wants to kill as many of these 5-strength units as he can to stop all the points racking up, to stop them becoming big. And also playing Lugos there, he's thinning his deck. And if he thins his deck, then, you know, it means he's more likely to find Gremist, which is a big part of the strategy, is, you know, playing Gremist, resurrecting Gremist, restoring Gremist. Freaking Gremist, oh man. Just makes me so angry. It makes me so angry. No, I'm not that angry. Okay, so out comes Ceres. He's playing Ceres from hand. You know, that hurts. That hurts. The question Freddy has now, you see him laughing. The question Freddy has now is, do I lock Ceres? If he locks Ceres, he can't lock Morkvarg. If he doesn't lock Ceres, it goes to the graveyard. So I almost think, like, you have to lock Ceres. You're better off, I think, locking Ceres than you are letting him get it in his graveyard. Because he will have the reses, you know? He's got Sig. He's got Morkvarg. He hasn't even discarded that yet. He's got Priestess of Freya, and he's got Warmongers. So he's got the options, and Freddy's choosing not to go for it. Not to go for it. Adzikov, though, still playing. Interesting. See, I would have thought that Adzikov would maybe pass to make sure he gets the Ceres in the graveyard for the res. But then I guess he has no carryover. Though he could then play Bran on the next round, because Freddy can't try past that. So it's an interesting situation, all things told. Interesting. But you can see, again, he's doing damage to those small units. He wants to damage the small units. The more small units that he damages, the less value he's getting out of those blue stripe scouts. So that is something to be aware of. And I hate that they have blue stripe scouts, blue stripe commandos, and blue mountain commandos. This game, like, I feel like CDPR makes this difficult for you as a commentator by having so many cards with very similar names, you know? Naked banner. Yeah, that is the most naked dumb banana I ever did see. Okay, so Freddy's down by 8 points. So he wants to make 9 points in one play. CLA is quite easily 9 points in one play. Temerians are also 9 points in one play, but he's maybe wanting to hold the tempo. The thing is, It feels really awkward if you win round 1 by like too many points. He also has Radovid, which he is aware that he wants to probably lock the Ceres, although it looks like to me he's not necessarily wanting to do it like this round. The thing is, Adzikov really wants this round as well. So I don't know. I think like I can't exactly work out, you know, their game plans. You're kind of trying to guess. Like, I think Freddy can tell Adzikov wants this round, so he's not too worried about when he locks the Ceres. And he's maybe just trying to wait out and bet a second lock target. But it doesn't seem to be happening. And Adzikov is just busy thinning his deck. But what's he going to discard? Because if he plays the Warmonger, he's got a Raider in hand. So I guess you would discard something that you want to resurrect. But he doesn't really want to play that this round. He's better off waiting till next round and saving the resurrects. Although at this rate, it looks like he's not even going to be in a great position for Ceres, to be honest. Because he needs 4 reses. If he plays Morkvarg, that's 1. If he plays Sig, that's 2. If he plays Priestess, that's 3. He could then res Priestess and discard this Raider, that's 4. Because he can always resurrect the Warmonger, remember. So he does have the 4 reses should he need them. But I guess he's kind of like expecting Freddy to lock Ceres, right? He's probably expecting like the Ceres lock is going to come out. So in his mind, he may as well just leave it. Like, he may as well just, you know, act as if Ceres is locked, and that seems to be what's going on there. You saw Freddy with his Lambert choosing to shoot the Raiders, and the reason you would do that is because you expect your opponent to have an Armor Smith. An Armor Smith will repair units, so you don't want to hit the 7 strengths, because you will do more points, you know, in the short term, but in the long term, if he has an Armor Smith, you do fewer points, and you don't really want to be doing fewer points of damage, right? It's just not what you want. Freddy's in a really nice spot with this situation. Like, he's got his Radovid, he's got his Temerians, which is an 18-point play, he's got Dijkstra, which is a pretty big play, and for once he doesn't have to worry about his Ails being a disadvantage. So, all in all, like, it seems to me almost that Freddy has, you know, he's planned his decks around, I think, King Bran. It seems to me that's what his kind of plan has been all along, is be in a situation where King Bran can't fuck you up too much. So, we'll see. I think this is still, like, anyone's set. Even though Adzikov, you know, he only needs 1 game and Freddy needs 2, I definitely think this is anyone's set. And I think Freddy getting that win with his Unseen Elder, especially as Unseen Elder is seen as a weaker deck, like monsters are seen as a weaker archetype. So Freddy getting that win has maybe put Adzikov, you know, off his momentum a little bit, kind of knocked him off his stride. So it's kind of good to see it. And now, Freddy is 2 points up. And I think he's got to go for that Radovid. Like, you just have to lock the Ceres, right? It's just an extra, like, 6 points can be all the difference in this. And although we've seen a lot of reses out of Adzikov, he's still likely to see more, you know? He's still likely to see more. And now the brand comes out because Adzikov is no longer worried about Morkvarg being discarded. Oh, Scorch. Discards an Armor Smith and probably a Priestess because you can chain them. Although if he discards Grimace, he then no longer has to draw Grimace. So if he discards Grimace here, it gives him 1 fewer Grimace play, but it puts Grimace in his graveyard, which means that he has Grimace in his graveyard for Sig, right? So then he has that, which is pretty nice. But it also tells Freddy, I have Sigdripper, or I have Restore. Freddy's like, I know that you have a way of finding Grimace because you just put Grimace in your graveyard. So it gives Freddy information about what Adzikov is up to. And that is something that, you know, Freddy is very aware of. And so it puts him in kind of a nice position. Adzikov doesn't have the, you know, easiest hand here. He is down 9 points. So I'd imagine you go Priestess and you res something, and then you hold the Sig Grimace play for later. But you're resing a 4. Oh, sorry, not a 4. There was an Armor Smith. I thought he clicked on for a second, I thought he clicked on a Raider, but he did discard that Armor Smith earlier. So a second, I thought he was resing a 4, and I was like, oh no, you can't do that. Like, why would you do that? That will give you points. But there we go. So, 2 cards up. 2 cards to 3. No carryover. Scorch. Holy shit. Okay, the Scorch is really, really interesting. And the reason the Scorch is really interesting is because Freddy has 3 Temerians and they have 6 strength, right? Freddy has 3 Temerians and they have 6 strength. I guess he can target draw the Temerians with marching orders. That's his kind of thinking there. If Adzikov passes, he has to play... This is really difficult for Freddy, because if Adzikov passes here, he doesn't have an easy 3 points. Or, like, he can play Stennis, but then that'll draw something. If it draws his Temerians, that's just thinned his deck of 18 points. You do not want to win, you know, 21 points to 2. He can't play the Reaver Scout because he has no target. If he plays Marching Orders, I believe that Marching Orders is pulling a 6, right? So then Marching Orders is pulling potentially Temerians. I'm not entirely sure if he's mulliganed all of his commandos. And the Scorch into the 6s would be pretty nice. So Adzikov has to decide if he wants to pass here or if he wants to play. And it's actually, I think, in Freddy's interest for Adzikov to play. Like, if Adzikov plays, then Freddy's in a better position than if Adzikov passes. And Adzikov's opted to play as well. I guess he wants to force cards out of Freddy. He's gone and made 15 points. But now, you know, now if you pull those Temerians, you're fine. And you're Scorch protected because he's played an 8. So that Scorch, I don't know if he's going to see value. Like, I guess he wants it for the Dunbanner, but because he coralled the Trollolol. So where is he going to see value in this Scorch? You know, is this going to be a situation? I guess if Freddy plays an Ale and makes a 10, that would give him it. But we'll see. We'll see. And Freddy has to decide how he wants to kind of keep tempo here. I think he's going to have to play his Temerians. Like, Adzikov knows that he has Temerians, right? Oh, he's got a Banard Tutor instead. Okay. So that's not enough points for the round. Does he have a second Banard Tutor? Because if he has a second Banard Tutor, he now has a target for his Reaper Scout. But Adzikov now has a target for his Scorch. So, you know, unfortunately, he's not going to be in that situation with nothing to burn. He can't really play... Well, I mean, he could play his 8-point Harpooner, but he would literally just be getting 8 points out of a Harpooner. Interestingly that he's decided to play into this round, you know, that's the thing I find the most interesting about this situation is that Adzikov didn't choose to just pass and go back to even cards. I'm wondering what his thoughts are there. You know, he has Udalric in the deck, but he's not, I guess, unless he intends to draw Udalric in the final round, but if you draw Udalric in the final round, you're giving your opponent 12 points. So I don't entirely understand Adzikov's decision to play into this round. I think ultimately it makes his life more difficult. He can thin out his deck. He's got an Armorsmith, a Priestess, Udalric, and one other card. Gremist. No, but he discarded Gremist, so it can't be Gremist. Muzzle? I think it's Muzzle. Right? So his cards left in his deck are Udalric. Did he discard the Priestess there? I'm not sure. Udalric, Priestess / Armorsmith, and Muzzle. So I guess he's like guaranteeing his Muzzle for the final round, right? That's the plan. Oh, I forgot Marching Orders actually buffs one of your units by 2. So we were never going to see that sexy 3/6s Scorch anyway. You hate to see it. You hate to see it. I think this round Freddy will... If Adzikov passes, I think Freddy will play the Beer. I think if Adzikov... how many points behind is he? 9. No, 1. So Adzikov, if he plays the Scorch and burns 9, Freddy can't play the Beer. Freddy would only get 8 from the Beer. So... Kind of interesting. He can't pull anything with the Reaver Scout, can he? I don't believe he has another tutor, in which case he'd have to play the Beer because you're not playing Dijkstra, right? You're just not playing Dijkstra here. But then you're not likely to see Beer value in the next round anyway. So what's he got left? He played all his reses. I guess he's Restore. Restore must be left in the deck, right? So it must be Udalric, a res, and Restore. So maybe he's hoping on a Restore pull. But he doesn't have anything great to pull. Actually, no, he can... I was going to say great to target, but he can 100% target that Morkvarg. Priestess. Oh, man. So he didn't get his last card. He thinned all that way down. I think it's Restore. I'm pretty sure his last card must be Restore, and he didn't get it. Oh, it was a 50-50 on that chance. You know, you could have... Probably, like, the odds on his mulligan were 50-50, but probably less than that, because you could have... you could have... Excuse me. I'm trying to think how to explain this. You could have... He needs Naneki, right? Because he hasn't... So what's Freddy got left? Freddy has Naneki and Dumb Bananas. Naneki is a 9, I want to say, so that would give him a Scorch target. He's got Naneki, Dumb Bananas, and Shani. Shani's in there as well. So Shani, I think his cards left are Shani. He already used Restore. Yeah, I wasn't sure. So then, I don't know what, I'm trying to work out what everyone's last cards are. This is so much easier if you have depth lists, right? So, Freddy has Shani, Freddy has Naneki, and a Dumb Banana. There's a Dumb Banana, there's Shani. So he's not going to see value out of this Reaver Hunter because the last card is Naneki, unless he puts another Dumb Banana back in the deck. So you want to put a Dumb Banana back in the deck here, right? You put Dumb Banana back in the deck because it gives you value with your Reaver Hunter. Or he went Stennis into Naneki. Oh, so, for some reason, I realized he was playing Shani, but he's not playing Shani, he's playing Stennis. Yeah, so now Naneki's a Dumb Banana back in and gets value out of his Reaver Hunter. This is fantastic by Freddy. Because he got the Shani into the Stennis, so he was guaranteed his Naneki there. Like, he either needed to draw Naneki or draw Shani, and actually drawing Shani is better because then he can Shani the Stennis into the Naneki. So, the way that Freddy's deck has thinned has basically put him in the perfect position. Like, he couldn't have lost, like, he couldn't, that Dijkstra, no matter what it drew, would work out for him, because it had to draw Dumb Banana and Naneki and Shani, Shani and Dumb Banana. And regardless of what it drew, you know, it works out for him. Unless it drew Shani first. If it drew Shani first, he risks Stennis. Actually, no, because then if it drew Shani first, he plays Stennis, he gets a Dumb Banana, then he gets Naneki with the second draw of Dijkstra. So, no matter what he draws there, he's in a really good position. And this Scorch isn't enough, because he'll Scorch the Banana, right? He'll Scorch the Dumb Banana, but, you know, it's a net play of nothing. Like, Freddy GG well played. Oh, man, we're going to game 5! Get hype. I'm so excited. I'm so excited. Because no matter what Freddy did there, like, he was getting his Naneki and he was getting what he needed. And that's what I mean by his thinning decks and his consistent decks. I said this earlier, that he plays decks that are thinning and that are consistent and that can find the cards that he needs. And you saw he had the Cleaver and he had the Radovid, and in both those situations he was able... Oh no, the leak is dead. In both of those situations he was able to take out... In both of those situations, he was able to take out Ceres, and that's pretty good. And he had 2-0 to 2-2, so... Oh man, I still kind of want Adzikov to lose for the memes. I feel so bad for him, though. Like, part of me is like, come on, lose, because then you always lose in the first round. But part of... And also because I like Freddy, he's part of Gwent Open. I want him to win. But also, I feel bad because, like, Adzikov is a really nice guy, and he's a really good player. And I think, like, he's just unlucky in tournaments. It is in fact very intense. I need to drink some water. Jesus Christ, talking for this long has been more challenging than I thought. No, he didn't. Game King won last time versus Freddy. Adzikov got knocked out in the first round. Adzikov in every tournament that he's played in this year, I believe, has been knocked out in the first round. Okay, so Spies versus what is it called? Bran. And this is good for Freddy because Spies is a great deck. Spies is a really, really, really great deck. Ooh, Assassination. I wonder if he's running Orcs. So we've got Vicavaros, Imperas, Enforcers of Brigades, Nausicaa, Emissary, like very standard. Infernal is kind of standard. Cantarella is good. Rainfawn, we'll see him pull Joachim with that. We've got Iris. It's a kind of standard deck, really. Kind of standard deck. Meanwhile, Adzikov got a better mulligan this time. You know, he didn't draw 3 Raiders, Ceres, and Morkvarg, so he doesn't have to play Ceres from hand, which is always nice. He's in a fairly happy spot. Iris, you know, Freddy knows that Adzikov has Coral, so that's the one thing you have to kind of be aware of with your Iris plays, is that they can kill it with Coral. So then what you want to do with your Iris is you want to play Iris after you have 2 Imperial Enforcers on the board. Because if you have 2 Imperial Enforcers on the board, then as soon as you play Iris, you then get shots in order to shoot a spy. And if you have 2 Imperial Forces on the board, then you get to shoot twice. And if you get to shoot twice, then you get to kill Iris with 1 shot. And Freddy's just like, nah, you're not getting cards on the deck. And this is also, I think, a little bit Coral bait, right? Infernal is Coral bait, because if he corals it, then it's not going to mess up his draws. So this is kind of a good play regardless. Like, it's a good play because it messes up his draws. It also gives, I think, Freddy some information about whether Adzikov has Coral. Because if Adzikov has Coral, Adzikov is likely going to want to Coral this card. And I think he would Coral this over Iris, even if you expect Iris, because if he plays Iris, there's a chance that he can kill it on the same turn, which is Enforcers. On top of that, like, your counter to Iris, you have an Armor Smith, so you can always just put some armor on Iris and make her harder to kill. But then even if you do that, you know, potentially you have Menno, and Freddy has Assassination. So Freddy's in a good spot to kill Iris. So then, you know, the Coral, you have to think, do I Coral this now? Or do I coral this, or do I not coral this and wait for the Iris that he might kill on the turn that he plays it? You know, and I think in that situation, you'd coral this now. So that tells Freddy that Adzikov doesn't have coral. That is how I personally would read this play. But Freddy hasn't done any deck thinning yet. He hasn't started playing out those emissaries. He's opted to play the Enforcer first. That gives you 2 damage. And then every time you play a spy, you get to shoot. So that is what Freddy's going for there. But it has baited out the Lugos because you do not want to deal with Enforcers. Enforcers are not fun to deal with, and you just don't want to have to deal with them. So I think Adzikov with the Lugos, that is the right target for Lugos. Because Enforcers also, he can then use them to kill Iris. And you don't want him to kill Iris, so you're kind of trying to negate that as well. Scorch, not great. I mean, he can Scorch the 11, but it's just going to put terrible cards on the top of his deck. So that's something that, you know, Adzikov is kind of aware of. And he's going to get terrible cards on the top of his deck regardless, so what do you do? Although on the flip side, he does know that Cantarella exists, and Cantarella's an 11, and that would deny his Scorch. But, you know, with Scorch in this deck, you're waiting for those. You're waiting for the Impera brigades to come out, because you see Imperial brigades getting into the teens, getting into the 20s. That is your target for Scorch here. Infernal, not your target for Scorch. Is it called Infernal? I want to say that it's called Infernal. Maybe it isn't called Infernal. Maybe I do not know what the cards are called. And he's opting, you see here, to put armor on the spy. And the reason you would put armor on the spy is because you don't want your opponent to kill it, because if they kill it, it gives them value in their Vicavaro medics, of which Freddybabes, as you can see here, has 2. So it's kind of a situation where if you put armor on it, you're kind of stopping that from happening, and that is a useful play because you're not likely to need your armor smith to repair anything in this matchup. You're not likely to need to, you know, stop units, like damage units, and put them back to full health, because it's just not something that your opponent really plays. There's the Enforcer, and he'll shoot that emissary guaranteed with these 2 damage. Oh, he didn't do it. Oh wait, he's got an extra shot. My bad, he played 2 spies. Keeping up my points. If he shot it there, he'd only have gotten 1 point. Sure, he'd have only gotten 1 shot if he just straight shot it. So, Freddybabes maximizing the points. If you kill the emissary that gives you the shot, then you don't get the shot. So he got 2 points for playing it and 2 points for playing 1 spy, and that's how that works. Sometimes I get my maths wrong with the Imperial Enforcer all the time. It's like I always like, how many shots do I have? I'm not really sure. It's one of those cards that you got to get your head around, and I think it's in part of what makes Spies tricky to play. Like, Spies is a very strong deck, but it is definitely tricky to navigate in terms of sequencing and that sort of thing. Okay, so out comes a Resd Emissary. So you can see Adzikov is denying Freddy those Vicavaro medics. That is Adzikov's strategy here. Adzikov is like, no. I know what you're trying to do, and you're not going to do it, because I'm just going to res the emissaries that you play so that they're on your side of the board. And if he puts them on his side of the board, then that kind of fucks up Freddy's strategy. However, what Freddy could do is Freddy could play Emir and pick up that emissary. So there's the option to pick up the emissary and play another one from hand like that. That is definitely an option, but then he has to play something from his hand as well. And then the question is, what do you play from hand? Because you can't play a Vicavaro medic because there's nothing in the graveyard to res. You can't play Iris. Well, I guess you could play Iris. You could play Iris, in which case you've got Iris out, and you've got ways to kill her with Assassination. But it looks like he's just opting to play Assassination and to take those 14 points that he gets from it, puts him 1 ahead. And then just leave the emissary on the board. Because the thing is with Emir, you often want to play Emir if your opponent plays a spy. Because if Adzikov plays a spy, Freddy can just pick it up. And what Freddy can do is Freddy can play Cantarella, play Emir, play Cantarella, pick up the spy with Udalric. And Adzikov knows this. Adzikov knows that he can't really play his Udalric until Freddy plays Emir. But he's kind of thinking about it. And then maybe hoping that Freddy doesn't have his own spy. That might be the kind of thought process that's going on there. Coral or Muzzle. Oh, he's going to have to discard one. That is such a painful choice with Udalric. I think you take Coral here, right? I feel like you take Coral because Muzzle is capped at 16 points, whereas Coral, you can just kill anything. Oh, man. And then Freddy will have a look in his graveyard and watch Freddy's reaction. There it is. There, you see the little raised eyebrows. That was him checking Adzikov's graveyard and realizing that Adzikov had just discarded his Muzzle. And I wonder what Freddy will do here. You know, he has killed units. He's killed some of Adzikov's units, so he can now draw them with the Vicavaro medic. He won't get emissaries, but you know, that might not be too much of a problem. He has Cantarella, but maybe he wants to keep his Cantarella for when he plays Menno, because 100% Freddybabes will have Menno in this deck. The other thing he could do is he could res. He could. Oh wow! And he's got his Enforcer back, and now he's got 2 Enforcers, which means that if he plays Iris, he can kill her. I was gonna say what he could do is he could pick up a unit with Amir. He could pick up the Spy. He could pick up the Freya, and then he has a Freya in his hand. He could pick up the Emissary. He's got lots of really good targets actually for Amir on the board at the moment. And I don't see Adzikov winning this. I think Adzikov, if he's going to Coral, you want to Coral Ulderich. Not only is it the most points, it stops him picking it up. You could Coral the Golem if you call him the 11. If you Coral the 11, you stop him from fucking over your next turn's draw, because you stop him from putting the lesser golems in your deck, but he can still pick up your Spy. And so that's the kind of thing you have to be aware of. And he's kind of thinking he doesn't want to play Coral. He wants to save Coral for Iris. But he knows that with the two Enforcers on the board, that if he plays Iris, Iris is dead. So the other thing he could do, I guess, is Coral the Enforcer, but, you know, maybe that's not worth it. And he's opted to Coral the Golem and stop his draws from being terrible. I think it's called an Infernal. So now Freddy has a choice. Does Freddy play Iris and get 25 points and secure the round? In which case he would be 67 points, I believe, up. Adzikov can't catch this. He can Scorch. Oh, he can Scorch 2 17s! Oh, you've got to take this Scorch. You've got to take it. Because Coral hit Ulrich, the way Coral RNG works, he's hit 2 17s. Oh my god, that is a 34-point Scorch. I was going to say you can't catch this. That'll put him on 60, basically equivalent to 65. So he'd be 2 points down. Holy crap. That's gotta hurt. Like, that hurts. You gotta take it. You've gotta take it. Why would you not take a 34-point Scorch? I don't know. Unless you don't want to win this round. Unless you want to win this round with 1 card up. Oh, sorry, lose this round 1 card up. Oh, man. It hurts. It hurts. And that's just down to RNG. Like, Freddy's still ahead, but that is just down to RNG. And Freddy was trying to force Adzikov out of this round, right? Freddy was like, you know, Adzikov, I've had enough of you. Please leave. I guess he can play Amir. He could play Amir, Rez. I think there's an Armor Smith in there, potentially. And then pick up... What do you pick up? Emissary? Or Freya? I don't know. Or he plays Rainfawn and Joachim, but that's a lot of his win conditions. Like, you don't really want to play Rainfawn and Joachim. Or you high roll Cantarella. Oh, he's gone for an Emissary, so he's decided to just thin his deck and then try and find Joachim later. So now he's got a choice of 2 cards, and he plays another Enforcer, and then he gets a shot. So he's choosing to shoot a unit with armor, interestingly enough, and then another unit. I don't really understand the armor choice. I feel like you would have been better off, you know, shooting Morkvarg or the Freya, and that gets you, like, point gain. I'm not entirely understanding him choosing to shoot a unit with armor, but there we go. I guess in case Adzikov reses I guess maybe he's thinking if Adzikov reses the Emissary, then this way if he plays another Spy, he can then kill the other Emissary and then play his Vicavaro. So I think that must be the thought process with shooting the armor there, is that then if he plays Cantarella, he gets 2 shots, he kills that other Emissary and there's 1 in the graveyard, if Adzikov resed the Emissary. As it is, though, we have a Harpooner. I guess he's just trying to bleed Freddy. So Freddy must go... he's going to go Amir into Vicavaro? So what does he pick up? This is interesting. Does he pick up the 2-point Emissary or the 6-point Freya? If he picks up the 6-point Freya, I think it resets. Does it reset? I'm pretty sure your cards reset when you pick them up. In which case, you're probably better off just picking up the Emissary, because it's fewer points now. And ultimately, it's pretty good. He's thinned his deck quite well. We haven't seen the Nausicaa. So Joachim into a Nausicaa Brigade is pretty nice. There's Ceres. He's forced Ceres this round, which he actually really wanted to do. And then he kills Morkvarg. And if you kill Morkvarg after Ceres, then, you know, the res of Morkvarg doesn't trigger Ceres' timer, which is really nice. So potentially he could shoot the Morkvarg again and just stop Ceres from coming out once more. And that I would say would be a really nice play. And then picks up the Vicavaro Medic. Okay. I like this. I like this a lot. I think Freddy's in a really nice spot. I think Adzikov's in an awkward spot. Like, the problem with Bran is it relies a little bit too much on stuff like Gremist and a Restore, and he's not seeing it. I mean, it thins really consistently, so you're likely to see it, but he just doesn't have it yet, and that can put him in quite an awkward position. He's 15 points down. He's got a Warmonger and a Harpooner. The Harpooner is worth 8 and 5, so 13. So, you know, that's not going to catch him up either. And at that point, Freddy could just play the Vicavaro and res another, what's it called? He could play the Vicavaro and res another Emissary. Like, Freddy wants this round, and then he wants to play Cantarella once he has Menno. That's clearly what he's trying to do here. And that buffs his brigades, and then a Infiltrator adds another Spy, and that'll buff the 14-point dude once again. And then you get some shots. He's then killed Morkpug. You saw there, triggered the res. And he's trying to kill units, but he's trying to kill like low-value units. Because of the armor smiths, you don't want to be killing units that are kind of not worth very many points. And you saw there, because of the number of spies he played and the number of enforcers that he has on the board, that he's getting a hell of a lot of shots out. Like, lots and lots and lots of bullets, which is pretty awesome to see, to be honest. Pretty awesome to see. I realize I'm kind of time limited with this stream, by the way. So it is currently 4:45. I don't think I can stream till much past 6. So we might not be able to do the full set, especially this one's gone to 5 games, so we might not be able to do the full next set, unfortunately. Just check some things. But we'll see how it goes. And take it from there. There's Restore. And no Gremist. Still no Gremist. What do you mulligan here? I mean, Warmonger thins your deck. Maybe you just stick with it. Just, like, accept that you won't have Gremist. Menno, Vilgefortz, and Cantarella. So, Freddy can fix the card advantage here by... He might go for a 2-0, because he can fix the card advantage by playing Cantarella. Then he gets offered a card. He can either draw it or put it on the bottom of his deck. And he's chosen not to take it, and instead drawn Silak, which is a fantastic card. He's got Menno, so he can kill that. He can play Silak into a Spy. And then if he plays Silak into a Spy, he can find his Nausicaa. But I don't think he wants to find his Nausicaa. Like, what he wants to find is... He wants to find Joachim, or Joachim. He can play Vilgefortz on the Silak after he's played it and burned it. Question is, does he want to play that this turn? Or does he want to wait till next turn? Oh no, I feel like he probably... If he goes for the 2-0, what's his name? Adzikov doesn't have Gremist. If Adzikov doesn't have Gremist at the moment, so he can't do the final round, if he gets Gremist into Bear, kills Gremist, gets a Bear, into Sigdriffer, into Gremist, gets a Bear, into Restore, into Gremist, gets a Bear, like, it's going to be really difficult for Freddy. So Freddy has to decide if he wants to go for it now. That's kind of where Freddy's at. Or he could try and thin his deck. If he plays the Silak, he can thin his deck with an Emissary. And if he thins his deck with an Emissary, then it makes Joachim more likely to come out, which he definitely wants to do. You know, we know Joachim, whatever his name is, he's in that deck. And we know he's got a Nausicaa brigade. I think the other option is an Impera brigade. I think was that Impera or an Infiltrator? Yeah, typically you see 2 Infiltrators. And then, so I'm guessing he has Nausicaa, Joachim, Impera, and then some other cards in his deck. But this is basically making it more likely that he'll find the Joachim, should he choose to play into this round. And it also, you know, gives him a little bit of information about what Adzikov has, which is good for him. It's 12-21, but Menno, bear in mind, is a 19-point play. So he's got 19 points in Menno. And you're kind of wondering, what does Freddy have left? He's got 4 turns on Ceres and only 3 cards for reses. So he's not going to see Ceres, I don't believe, unless he has anything else he can discard. But I think he's played all of his Raiders as well. So I think Adzikov is in a really awkward spot here. You know, you play the Warmonger. Does he have any more Raiders? Oh, he's got 1 more. So that would put the timer down 1. But then he's only got 2 reses left, right? Sorry, 1 res left. He's only got Sig. And he needs 2 reses in order to... He needs 2 reses in order to trigger Ceres. But Restore doesn't count as a Resurrect. That's the thing that's interesting. Come on, Joachim. Let's see it. Let's see it. Oh, it's Infiltrator. Not what we wanted to see. You hate to see it. I mean, it does buff his... It does buff his Sig. But then Menno's not looking so hot here. Although this has thinned his deck. This has thinned his deck, which means that the Joachim is more likely to be found in the final draw, right? So he's got Menno. and he gets to draw 1 card and mulligan 1 card. So Freddybabes, I guess, is like maximizing the chance of him drawing the cards that he needs, right? 45 to 28, you're not taking it. You take an 8 into an 11. That's 19 points. That puts you ahead. That just comes down to top decks then. And whether you think you can top deck better than your opponent. Holy crap, I'm really surprised. I'm really surprised he's gone for this. Because basically, like, if he can top deck Joachim, he's in a really good spot. If Adzikov top decks Gremist, Adzikov has an 11-point play. What else does Freddy have? He has, admittedly, he gets to respond. So he has a Nausicaa, which is, I believe, worth 5, and then it does damage. It does less damage to a spy, more damage to a spy, though, and I don't believe Adzikov will be playing a spy. So Nausicaa's like 7 and damage. So it really depends. There's Gremist. See, that's the top deck that you want, and that is not the top deck that you want. There's the top deck that you want. There's the top deck that you want. Because what'll happen now is you'll get the Joachim into Infiltrator onto the Spy, and it's just not enough points. And look at that. That's such a shame for Adzikov. Like, he put up such a fight, but I really do feel like Freddy is teched against Brown. In the way that he's kind of played those decks, and the clean and efficient manner that he beat Adzikov there. I feel like he's kind of like, you know, I expect people to bring Bran. I'll ban Amir and I'll play into the Bran. And holy crap. Like, neither of those players looks very happy. You'd have thought Freddy would look a little bit happier because he just won, but apparently he's not the happiest bunny in the shed. And poor Adzikov. You know, I said that, you know, it's a meme that he loses in the first round, but he doesn't deserve it. Like, he's such a decent player, and he's like seems like a genuinely nice guy, and it's such a shame. Like, people say, you know, ladder doesn't equate to tournaments. Like, he can be the best on the ladder, but he doesn't do well in tournaments. But I think that, like, you know, he put up a really good fight there, and getting that reverse sweep, you see the prize pool then, the prizes have been split there. Match stake 1,000, 1,400, 1,600. I don't fully understand this image, but it is what it is. I'm going to be right back really quick, because I need to drink some water and not kill my voice, but stick around and I'll be back shortly.